Hello and welcome back to the Nutrition and Life podcast. My name is Lisa, I'm your host, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with strength and nutrition coach Ryan Kassim. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you. We were just chatting off camera about you being from Germany and also being a nomad right now, which is so cool.
Yes, yeah, well, and I mean, your background is also a bit diverse, so that's super cool. I love speaking
Hmm.
with people from all over the world. I mean, one of the beauties of being international, having the internet here. But
Hmm.
yes, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction into who is Ryan and what brought you to where you are today, and with your company, Body by Ryan Fitness as well. What made that journey happen?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a small town kid from Connecticut, and kind of like we were talking about the diverse part comes from my dad being from Lebanon, so I was raised in like that, um, you know, I would say it was probably more Americanized household because by that time my dad was just like he's been living in the States for a bit, so I was raised by like I'm a huge mama's boy, raised by my mom and my dad, and got into fitness through sports and really fell in love with it and fell in love with sort of like leading others through workouts and all that through sports as well. And then yeah, I think the majority, I guess to sum it all up, like the majority of how I coach now, it was more traditional in a way where it was focused on strength, focused on nutrition, and like get you results that you're trying to look for. And I actually made a big transition in my own business, focusing on mindset as well, because I went through a really like rock bottom moment with my own mental health about like 7 or 8 years ago and struggled with pretty severe anxiety and depression and started going to therapy since then. And it really allowed me to approach health and wellness in a way that I just felt like wasn't really communicated in industry and it's something I'm super passionate about too. But yeah, so I mean, I think that's how I coach. That's how I became a coach, and I was a personal trainer for years. But yeah, but now I'm a full-time online coach like you, and currently living in California. So we migrated a little bit, but yeah, that's kind of like the gist of my story.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing a little bit and for giving us a bit of a background. I love the why. I love that you have a personal connection there and that you also made the shift because not many people might have acted on that, or many people might have just continued with the way that, especially if business might have been going well, then why change anything if it's working? But if it feels inauthentic, I love that you took action on that. And I think that's really something that comes across very nicely on your page. It's just the authenticity. So, of course, I'm going to put all your handles in the show notes so people can check out your content as well. But one thing that I just loved, and I don't even know, you might even have that in your bio, or I don't know where I picked that up, is just the phrase vulnerability is key. So
Hmm.
maybe you can share with us why that's on there and also what exactly you mean by that even.
Yeah, I mean, well, someone did their homework. Kudos to you. Nicely done, Lisa. Yeah, I think for me, I never had that belief before, kind of like I was saying. I was such a meathead, at one point where like my life was fitness, nutrition, and how my body looked. And when I had that rock bottom mental health moment, I guess to kind of give that some context, I was just working out in the gym, and this regular at the gym came up to me and basically just said, he's like, I can tell you're going through a lot right now. He's like, I just want you to know it's all going to be okay. And it was like the first time anybody has really recognized that I wasn't doing well mentally. And it was also the validation I knew I was struggling with, but to have an external validation say, like, hey, I actually see you're struggling. And, it was like that moment I think I just needed because, once he walked away, I just like broke down crying in like the middle of the gym. And that's when I decided to go into therapy. And like for me, the reason I say vulnerability is key is because vulnerability to me at one point wasn't an option. It wasn't a thing. I was super emotionally suppressant growing up. Like we talked about being from like having influences from different countries, like my dad being from the Middle East, that's a big part of his culture is you be a man, you don't show emotion, you don't show love to family or anything like that. You show love in different ways, maybe financial support, or other means, but um it was not easy for me to convey my emotions or to communicate what I was feeling. It actually scared the shit out of me. And that's what I discovered through therapy is the more I shared what was on my mind, what I was struggling with, the more I peeled back the layers, like my vulnerability began to show, and then my vulnerability became my strength. And I remember my big moment. It's the reason why my podcast is called These Little Moments Podcast, is because my moment I had was I was at one of my mentors' retreats. His name's Jordan Saya, and at the end of the retreat, there was just like a mass group just kind of sharing and be super vulnerable with things they struggle with in life. I mean, most of it like with their weight and all those things. And I just remember like my gut on fire being like, oh fuck, like you have to talk, like you need to share because you have to get this off your chest. And I took the mic and basically was just like, fitness and nutrition's always been easy for me. It's like no big fucking deal. And I don't mean that in a way to discourage people or anything like that. It's just what it is. I said, but my biggest, obstacle in my life has been my mental health, has been sharing when I'm struggling, has been communicating how I'm feeling, like working through relationships and not feeling like and feeling very isolated and all these things. And that was such a huge vulnerable moment for me because it was like the first time I shared I was struggling with my mental health in front of a room of like 50 plus people. And it really was my moment that kind of was my catalyst for, how I changed coaching others, how I changed my relationships with my family, how I changed my personal relationships. Um, like, and then again, furthering digging up the things I needed to work on. Like the more vulnerable you are, the more you discover about yourself and there's so much more to learn and you just discover like, holy shit, I'm gonna be doing this the rest of my life type of deal. So when I say vulnerability is key, I literally mean like it's the key that unlocked me to be my full authentic self, but also to do that on social media and do that with my clients. I think social media often paints this everything's okay, highlight reel type of deal. And I just never vibed with that. I just like for me, it's like I can't make content if I'm not doing well, if I'm struggling. So like for me, it's like I need to share that I'm struggling because it almost in a way it tells me like, hey, it's cool. You're okay. It's okay that you're struggling. It's actually like a lot of people are struggling. You're gonna resonate with that. And that's what I mean. Like vulnerability is key because it just unlocks me. And I think when it's my goal in life to really help bring that out in others too. Because not only is it unlock yourself, but it's going to help your nutrition. It's going to help your fitness. A lot of this stems inside out. So when we really unlock ourselves, it unlocks your fitness and nutrition, and it makes it feel less overwhelming, less daunting because you just have a good grasp of who you are.
That's absolutely beautiful. And I think it's really the only way we can show up authentically. And for me personally, I mean, being German, and I'm stereotyping here, but I'm very stereotypical German, at least by nature, I guess. So
Hmm.
also, sharing emotions or sharing when we're struggling is not necessarily something I grew up with witnessing or seeing or even like hugging and then allowing yourself to cry in front of others, even if it's your family,
Mm.
like as strange as that sounds, but really truly even there. But the funny thing for me is that I've always hated just superficial small talk and people just kind of scratching the surface. And I've admired people all my life, where they would just go a level deeper and would open up. And so it's kind of funny how we see something in others, but then sometimes we struggle to think that that's okay to demonstrate that ourselves. But
Hmm.
or the times where I have then learned to open up and so on, the resonance is so beautiful. As you say, like you will get other people saying like, oh, I thought you never have issues with this. It's so refreshing to hear that this is a point for you as well. Or
Hmm.
just in general, thank you for showing us that side too. We thought being a digital nomad is always butterflies, unicorns, and beaches all year round. So nice to see that sometimes you feel lonely or isolated or whatever. So
Hmm.
yeah, just from a personal perspective there. But I'm curious to hear, so with then going into therapy, what are some of the main things that you've learned that helped you become an even better coach as well? Because you said you took that and you also transferred that into your business.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And I like how you said like butterflies, unicorns, and beaches too. That was just a funny thing. Funny trio. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like curiosity because I think any good therapist is a curious therapist. They listen and then they ask questions, right? And I think that's so important with a client relationship because as coaches, I'm sure you got into this industry because you want to help people, right? And you love helping people and it fills your cup. And I did it for the same reason too, right? Like I always loved helping people and I love being in service to others. But I think our instinct is to fix, 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 right? Like you hear a problem, you're like, oh, this is what you do. This is it. Good on like you're good on your way, right? But like people aren't like cars, like people have so much more depth to them, right? Like I think that's like you just said, like small talk, like my favorite people in this world too are people who don't have the depth of a puddle, but the depth of an ocean, right? And same thing as a coach, we need to be curious and be good listeners. So like, I think just one, like therapy taught me I need to ask more questions, right? Because I might be fixing a symptom, but we're not getting to the root of why you stress eat or emotionally eat, right? So asking questions is huge and being curious is incredibly important and not going into like a fixer mindset. I think also empathy, right? Like since being in therapy for like 7, 8 years now, I get so emotional and I can put myself in someone else's shoes more. Like I just can connect with them better. So it kind of granted me connection more and empathy more. And so when someone's telling me their story, like I can feel it, right? In like a weird way. It's just like if I'm watching a Disney movie, I'm gonna cry, right? Because it's like it's hitting my feels. Same thing with like working with a client. It's like I think some of the best coaches out there can create empathy, right? And connect with that person and why they struggle. Because if you can create empathy with that person, then how you coach them is going to be different, right? It might be like, oh, like this person maybe needs a softer approach when it comes to how I'm coaching them, or maybe we need to go more gradual, or maybe they need like a strict, like, no, like let me be no bullshit with you type of mentality. Like it just grants you access to your toolbox more to be like, what? Oh, this is what they actually need for me, them right now, right? So it grants you connection and empathy. And then I think it also just grants you the it changes your own expectations as a coach too, right? Because I think you get a client and maybe in your head you're like, oh, like, yeah, you should get this by like 6 months, blah, blah, blah. But like it changes your expectations because you're just like, no, this person has so much depth to them. They've been through so much. It probably is going to take some time for them to eat more protein. It's probably going to take some time for them to use a food scale when tracking because change is hard for them. And I think it just changes your mindset around how you coach. So those are just some things that therapy granted me. And like I said, I think it's so important because, again, because I have a good idea of who I am, I can now show up better for somebody else.
And I love what you said about just asking more questions or just in general, like asking. It'll give the person the impression that not just the impression, but will portray that you're actually interested in them. It's not just a cookie cutter approach. We have a female,
Hmm.
45 years, here's your plan, blah, blah, blah. But likewise, since you're vulnerable, she's going to be more likely to share stuff with you when you're asking, like, why do you always binge on Thursday nights? It's not just going to be like, oh, it's towards the end of the week. She might just say, like, every Thursday I have a meeting with this horrible person at work and blah, blah, like actually opening up. And
Hmm.
from personal experience, I've been working with a mentor for about 3 years, and he's more of a therapist actually than my mentor, a bit of a jack
Hmm.
of all trades, really. But every now and then he just asks a question and it triggers something within me and I've like it opened the floodgates and I was like crying. Or then other times it was like gave me this brilliant idea and all he did was ask a question. And there's so much
Mm,
power in asking some nice questions. And I
mhm,
truly think there's a lot to the point of being a fixer, especially as a coach. Something that
mm,
I've read not too long ago in a book was like most of the time when people tell you something, they don't just want to be quote unquote fixed. They usually either want to be just heard, literally just heard. They just need a person to talk to.
mm,
They want to be hugged, or sometimes they want to be helped. But like it's not always the here's your plan or here's a change in macros, see you later, bye type of thing.
Yeah. No, and I think you nailed it. That's like the thing I was gonna say next is like yeah, I think at the end of the day we all just want to feel seen and it's like you said, a simple that's what that person did for me many years ago when they saw me in the gym. It's like I felt seen and and just that small like that was a 2 minute conversation. A 2 minute conversation in the middle of a fucking corporate gym, music blasting, like your typical gym. And that 2 minute conversation got me where I am today. And it's simple things like that that just when you care, it creates ripples in people's lives, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the fact that you care really, again, comes across nicely on just the content that you share as well. For example, I saw that you train some elderly people, including also your family members.
Mhm.
And I'm curious because you said most of your training or your clients are online, but what motivated you to be like, hey, I'm going to use this time, even if it might not be worth it financially or anything else, but I want to make an impact in person with the specific age group. What was it that motivated you?
Yeah, well, I think one, selfishly, I was lonely because, as you know, when you have an online business, you're at your computer most of the day, and it gets really lonely. And it's fine. I remember having a conversation with my dad, and I was just like, I feel like my social skills suck right now. Like, like especially coming out of like the pandemic, I just felt like I felt awkward talking to people in person and all like it just felt weird. So selfishly, it was like feeling lonely and kind of like unfulfilled in some ways because I like I said, I started as an in-person trainer for like 6, 7 years before I started my online business. And I always loved it. It's just that I got so burnt out because it has a different dynamic to it. Um, so selfishly, it was loneliness, and I found this job where they were looking for a trainer for geriatric patients, and it is also one of those things too. It's like I didn't have any expectations for it, um, but it was just one of those things. I quickly found out that they have so many lessons to give me and like there's no amount of money you could pay to hear someone who has 90 years of experience in life, right? Like that's insane, right? So so probably the person you see the most is my client Warren. So Warren is almost 91. He'll be 91 in December. And Warren started with me. He was bound to a wheelchair, could not walk, had broken his hip, and he had not started his physical therapy. He was like a month behind when he should have already been starting his physical therapy. But the reason for that is because he had a wife who had Alzheimer's and wasn't doing well and wanted to be with her. And um, get me emotional. Wanted to be with her, and then that's so he literally like put off his own health and well-being to be at her side. And I thought that was like one such a beautiful thing. I was like that like for one a man like that is such a beautiful thing to see sacrifice for partner. I think that was like you don't get many examples like that in life nowadays. Um and then two, to to be there for somebody in their time of need. I think it's like that's such a huge value for me too, like family and all that. So we got started and he wasn't able to do much at first, right? Like it was really like what can you do in your chair, right? And what how can we get you moving? Um and then like we slowly started training and then slowly but surely like his we get his legs moving, we get him standing up and sitting down and we get him eventually into like a walker and like a four-wheel walker, right? And then he's walking more, and then it was like crazy, but his wife who he'd been seeing passed away, right? And they were it was like a Cinderella story. It was like they've been together since they were 18 years old, right? So they were together for like, man, like 70 years or 60 years, right? And it was just like amazing because, he's such a person who he takes whatever cards he's given, doesn't complain for long, and like continues and moves forward, right? And it was really just like a beautiful thing. So, we've been working together for well over a year, almost 2 years now. And now he's walking. We play golf on Wednesdays. I take him in the pool on Fridays. And like his big goal was to go to a football game with his kids and walk into that stadium. And that was such a beautiful thing too, because he accomplished that last month. And it was so cool. He sent me the video of it. I was like tearing up when he sent me to it because it's just like we talked about connection and empathy, like you connect with these people, you see how much they go through, how much they struggle, and for them to accomplish a goal, it's just like it's kind of what everybody gets into our business for, is like because it changes their life no matter what age. And I think that's why I really do love training geriatric clients too. Like I train everybody, but I always have a soft spot for geriatric clients because their goals aren't weight loss. Like their goals are, I want to play with my grandkids. Their goals are, I just want to walk. Their goals are, I want to live as long as I can to create memories, right? Like, and that's what I've always gravitated towards, like with my own training too, is like my intention has always been like, I want to be a super active dad one day. I want to be strong. I want to be as independent as possible. Like I want to be able to travel and go to all these different countries and not have to worry about how I'm going to do that or anything like that. So like I said, the lessons that specific population granted me have been absolutely, you can't put a number on it. It's just been so gratifying to do.
I can only imagine what it must be like to hear those stories, benefit from those stories, but also just through such small things that we don't even think about. Like we don't think about putting one foot in front of the other or carrying groceries up or whatever. It's just like something, that you do every day. Maybe it's even annoying. But for those people, it's like their dream. And I think the wonderful message is also that it's never too late. It really isn't. And the saddest thing is when people just give up, when they're like, well, this is a normal process of aging. And when you're 60, you're supposed to be overweight. When you're 70, you're supposed to be on 20 different medicines. When you're 80, you're supposed to be incapable of walking. So it's really nice to see that he also brought that mindset instead of like, oh, it's too late for me already anyway. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and I mean, in terms of mindset, I'm sure you do a lot in that aspect with your clients when it does come to weight loss also, because I think
Mhm.
truly that's one of the biggest determinants whether someone's going to be successful or not. So how do you approach that with your clients?
Yeah, so I kind of break it down into three things. So first stage is assess, right? So with anything, you need to assess where somebody's at first. So we do that again through questioning, through, initial onboarding, all these things. And you're also kind of assessing throughout the entirety of coaching too, right? So you need to assess first because assessing grants you, the coach, information that you didn't have access to before, and also grants that person awareness around who they are and their actions and their patterns, right? So we need to assess first. So that's like the first thing I always do. So like a lot of coaching is asking questions. So whether it's like, tell me more about when you got home and you started to eat mindlessly, like what specifically were you feeling, right? So getting into specific questioning like that, I think is really important because again, it gives that person awareness that most of the time, like let's be honest, like people are trying to ignore why they're doing those things, right? Or they're just not mindful of it. And it opens up that conversation and it creates that awareness that we're looking for. So we assess and then we implement, right? I think so implement is tools. So, whether it's if somebody's demonizing food, like a tool I'll have them do is like, listen, I want you to go to the store once a day, get one serving of a candy that you like and eat it and track it and make sure it fits within your calories, right? So that way, our end goal with that is so that you no longer demonize foods. You understand you could still lose weight while eating these foods, and it's totally fucking okay that you had a Kit Kat bar, right? So implementation, right? And then after implementation, you reassess, right? So this is called the AIR method, right? AIR. So you reassess. So now that we're reassessing, let's see, like, okay, so how did you feel when you were eating this candy bar? So now we're going back to assess, right? So like now we're getting to more things that we're unlocking. Did you feel stressed? Did you feel anxious? Did you feel guilty? Tell me more. What specifically were you feeling? And then once you reassess, you could say, okay, maybe this tool didn't work for you. Okay, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and see, okay, what other tool can we implement that is going to get us to the end result that you want, which is have a good relationship with food, weight loss, tone, right? Like all these things that people typically want, so that we can make sure this process is for you and that it doesn't just stop at one tool and it doesn't just stop at like that first assessment. Like we're always reassessing to see what we can do to continue to build.
That seems like a really good framework, and I'm sure the client themselves they might not even necessarily be aware of the framework, but it's good to just have that in mind. And as you said, often it's literally we're not aware of our habits or the things that we do automatically or
Hmm.
that they are correlated with. And I don't know about you, but I often have clients that even if we set them up really nicely. We have assessed a lot of things. They're in a good routine, maybe even several months down the road, they've lost some weight and so on. And every now and then they start self-sabotaging or they do one thing and then it kind of spirals them down again. I think that's a really, really tricky point to get to the bottom of why is that self-sabotage happening and how can we even almost frame that as something positive. But yeah, how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, because self-sabotage is an interesting thing. Um, I think typically self-sabotage stems from shame and guilt. And and also can stem from like alignment, right? Like we might, I think coaches are a good example of self-sabotage, right? Like I know in my past, like I've self-sabotaged my business because like things were going well and like it was comfortable. And it's like, oh, as a coach is like, it can't be like this. Like there has to be chaos. Like that's how it felt when it first started. So like some people self-sabotage for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's your self-worth, right? I think um man, like you break down self-sabotage, it's like layers, 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 layers. It's really not like one or two certain things. It's like it could be self-worth, it could be shame, it could be guilt. Um it could be something was unsustainable, right? It could be external, things that happen like major life events that can cause someone to something triggers you, right? So self-sabotage and that's like our job as a coach is to get to the root of it again, right? So that's what we talk about, like reassess, like as through coaching, because you could be going along with the process and like you said, like they lost their weight and now they're in maintenance and things are good, but maybe they're so used to dieting that like that was their comfort zone, right? And that they only feel like they're at peace when they feel like they have a weight loss to lose, right, or weight to lose, and sabotaging their own results that way, right? Like, so it gets so deep and like so layered with everything. But I think again, like it's our job as a coach to kind of peel it back and reassess. Right. And again, asking like specific questions. So like, hey, what were you feeling when you started to emotionally eat here? And how do you feel about your progress currently? And do you believe that you're worthy of this, right? Like I think deep questions like that start to peel the layers back because self-sabotage is it's like an onion. I'm giving you like a Shrek reference. But it's like an onion. There's layers and layers and layers and layers. And you really only get to the root kind of once you get there and you can start peeling it back and seeing what was the cause of this. But yeah, I mean, I think it's super common. I think the other thing too is as a coach to create a safe space for somebody when that happens because, like we said, when there's often shame and guilt associated with self-sabotage. And when it's made to feel like it's not normal, that's the narrative they're already putting in their head. Um, it perpetuates that shame and guilt cycle and then further triggers them to do the things they used to do when they feel shame and guilt. And yeah, I think like as a coach, it's our job to create a safe space for when these things happen too, and say like, hey, this is completely fucking normal, and it's actually like probably a good thing this is happening because now it gives us more information that like you probably didn't know and I didn't know, and it's actually and that's usually when I fuck my clients up. I'm like, I'm so happy this happened. This is fucking great, and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, because now we have so much more knowledge of you and awareness of you. It's like we didn't have this before. We thought everything was going great, but like then this happened. Like this is cool, right? And they're just like, oh shit, like what the fuck? So it's like, so I think it's part of as a coach, it's about creating a safe space and also, like making it just feel like this is very normal and it's going to be okay. And we just have to figure out where this stems from.
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page with you on just making sure that they know that it's actually something positive. I like to refer to it as it's your old you coming back and like trying to test you or trying to pull you
Hmm.
back in like a period of retraction. And I sometimes think or try to like convey that those periods of retraction, they're always going to happen. Like you're never going to be at a point, neither you nor I probably either where we're like, oh, everything is fine. I'm never feeling like I'm self-sabotaging, whether it's in business relationships or so. But the sign of progress, really, in my opinion, is when those periods of retraction have a bigger space between them. And first, it might happen every week that you're eating a little bit too much. Then it might happen once a month, and then it's like once every 3 months, and then once a year. And you're like, it just takes some time for you to break through that comfort zone barrier and to actually take on that new identity. But I think we do need to make sure as coaches and as clients, of course, also that we're aware of the fact that it takes a completely new person to have that new body. If you like, you can't just expect to keep eating the same things and hang out with the same friends, doing the same habits, but losing the weight within 6 weeks or 8 weeks and then keeping it off. That's not going to work. So if that's still
Hmm.
ingrained in that client's mind and they think that that's just how they're going to go on, then yes, it's definitely like a matter of shedding awareness onto that and be like, well, what circle, what friends are actually helping you become that new person, which ones maybe don't, and how can we make sure you hang
Hmm.
out more with the ones than the other?
Hmm. Yeah, and it's funny. See, isn't it funny how like our focus probably is like strength and nutrition, but like you can kind of quickly see how, and that's like we said, that's why I at least changed a lot of my approach when it came to coaches because there's it's really not about strength and nutrition. Like yes, those are what you want, but like there's so much going on in between that is going to link you to your strength and nutritional goals. And I agree. I think progress is a reduction in frequency. Like if somebody's binge eating progress is a reduction in the frequency that you're binging, right? So yeah, like I think that's a great check mark to see like if you're making progress.
Mm. And yeah, one thing that you said earlier was in regards to like people having certain fears of certain foods and so on. And I think almost everybody comes to us with certain food beliefs. Like I also used to believe like carbs are inherently bad. Like literally, that was my thought. I thought like as soon as I even an apple or whatever, I'm gonna gain weight just because of that. And so breaking through some of those barriers is again also so rewarding as a coach, but of course also for the client when you're like, whoa, I ate that. And the next day the scale is still the same. That's crazy. We just
Hmm.
assign too much, yeah, ethical value almost to certain foods, I believe.
Hmm. 1000%. Yeah, there's there's way I mean, and I think in some extent it's totally valid, right? I'm sure in like your culture, like Oktoberfest, like that's a big thing that's surrounded by beer, pretzels, and like a bunch of delicious food, right? Same in America, like Thanksgiving's huge and it's all about food and family and all these things, right? So it makes sense why people have these ideologies around food and why emotion is connected to foods because that's just what culture is. And it's totally normal, actually, that you have these emotions. Like when I was sick, my mom would often give me chicken noodle soup and Ritz crackers to put into it. And like, that's very comforting to me, right? It's like I want to feel that comfort when I don't feel well. So I think it's very normal. It's just a matter of, like we said, it's a matter of the emotion you assign to that food and how you and the relationship you have with it, right? Because intention's everything. The intent you put behind that thing, it's determining whether it's like I need this in the moment to help comfort me and it's all okay, versus I'm coping with this to avoid continue to avoid what I'm feeling, right? Or to continue to self-sabotage. So there's it's all about the intention that you're putting behind your food that is going to determine your relationship with food.
Yeah, totally. And on that note, I often hear like, oh, there's a certain food and when I have it, I can't stop. I need to eat all of it. Or when that's in my
Hmm.
house, I need to eat all of it. And those are some like, when you hear that as a coach, the little bells ring and you're like, okay, okay, pause. Can we like dig into
Hmm.
this? And can we
Yeah.
practice that you have as you mentioned, for example, like by going to the store every day and purchasing just one bar, you're not purchasing the mega family king size whatever bag and of
Hmm.
Kit Kats, and then it's at home and always tempting you, just having a little bit and reinforcing that belief in yourself, that trust in yourself, that you can actually stop after just that.
Hmm. Yeah, 1000%. I agree.
Well, Ryan, I'd love to hear what is something that you're excited about in your business over the next few months or years, or even just in general in the fitness and nutrition space.
Uh, it's funny is like I think it's just more of I'd say it's probably more just personal stuff. Like this year has been a big year in terms of personal growth and independence. Like I was in a relationship earlier this year. Actually, my ex was from Germany, and it's been a big year of personal growth in terms of like of doing things outside my comfort zone. Like when I'm going to Europe at the end of this year, I'm doing it by myself. And just like solo traveling and just kind of like it's almost like it feels like a rebirth in some ways. And so like I guess like the cool thing is I'm excited to continue to be have the opportunity to work while I'm like you're doing like traveling the world and seeing cool places because that was a big motivation for me for wanting to start my online business. Um, and I think the only other thing is like continue to work on what my values are. So like family's a big value for me. So I just got back from a trip, a month-long trip of going to see like literally everybody I love like all over the country. And that was like a beautiful thing too. So I think what I'm looking for is just to continue to for personal growth, continuing to help my clients in that regard and then just continue to build that connection with my family and really just hone in on what my values are because I think as humans we sometimes get off track with that just like people get off track with nutrition and I always feel more aligned with my life and my purpose with coaching and all these things when I prioritize my connections, I prioritize my personal growth and and everything just kind of molds together but I don't know if that answers your question with like what I'm excited about, but it's kind of like I'm kind of the type where like you'll say like, "Oh, do you know this person in the industry?" I go, "I have no fucking clue." Because I'm like I would say I'm more tapped into like just my close circle and when I'm introduced to people like you, it's really awesome because because otherwise I don't know if I would be. So I think it's amazing to have this opportunity to talk to you and then connect with you. But yeah, I mean I think that's just kind of what I'm looking forward to is just kind of like living more life and creating more memories and continuing to put myself out of my comfort zone to continue to grow.
I think that's an awesome answer. And I mean, in terms of your values, it really sounds like you have a lot of clarity on them. And that's just a beautiful thing to hear. And in terms of the location-free work, I mean, for me personally, it's been one of the best changes I have made from full-time employment into being able to just really use this. And I don't think enough people actually use the freedom that they might have with being location-free. But of course, everything comes
Hmm.
with a pro and con. So sometimes I wish
Yeah,
I had a better podcasting studio, but yeah, I guess
sure.
we it's all just trade-offs, right?
Yeah, 1000. I mean, you're doing it in your living room now. I think that's cool. It's like I'm doing it in my bedroom, so it's like
Well, there
I
we
think it's
go.
cool. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Ryan, I'm thankful for your time, and I'm really excited for people to listen to this. I will put all your handles in the show notes so they can go and check out your content. But yeah, just thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.